So I know that there is this temptation to give up, uh, give up hope, resign ourselves to the worst of other people's natures. And I know that there's this idea that maybe after all of these years of chugging along, that Trumpism is like this perpetual motion machine. But we're closer to the end than we are to the beginning. I would just say that looking at how he won this election, the last one, what pushed him over were those crossover votes from unlikely supporters, people who were all in situations like mine. Uh, you've got young men, uh, people just concerned about their personal economies. You've got people of color, and really, that's all vulnerability because these people are persuadable. So I'm going to read this off. There's a segment of Trump voters who, like me, were looking for ways to interpret and interact with their environment and wound up in a cult of personality. There is stress and tension with being in MAGA since it's a personality cult and it's very demanding emotionally if you're especially if you're in an environment that's not as conducive to it. So this would actually be particularly intense for new Trump supporters, young Trump supporters, minorities, crossover voters, and people of color in MAGA. So some supporters give up on society to avoid feeling that stress and tension that comes with devoting all of your uh, resources to being in this personality cult. They'll listen to lifestyle influencers who say the world is fallen, the country has fallen, and that their way of living is all that is left, and that you know outside of this there is nothing else. So that way they can avoid feeling the uneasiness about being disconnected from broader society. So core MAGA really has given up and has found their small worlds to escape to. But MAGA, like I was, actually just hoped that society and the Trump worldview eventually would become Congress and that they wouldn't have to choose between Trump and society. But MAGA, as we know, is inherently oppositional. By the end of my time as a Trump supporter, there are more supposed enemies than when it all began. And when I started, I was okay with having some enemies. But I believed that there was this big, grand plan, the one that he sold me on, that was just going to manifest and everybody was going to come together and be excited about this great economy that was. Uh, it doesn't make as much sense when I look back, but I was just thinking that he was going to create this thing that everybody would be happy, and and everybody who is in conflict with me, they would they would also benefit, and then I'd be able to use that way to integrate with them uh, better. Because I mean, really, when you're in that deep, you do have a lot of maladjustment. And so when I looked at my friends who stayed in MAGA, it was no coincidence that uh, Trump holding a Bible upside down with while threatening to use the military on protesters of George Floyd's murder in 2020 hit me, but didn't hit them because these were my um, this, well, really that there is this racial separation here because they were in an entirely different environment than I was. They weren't engulfed by an environment of conflicting perspectives. My family would talk about how this stuff felt to them, despite being in MAGA. Unlike the most core Trump supporter, there was always this back door where I get opposing viewpoints and conflicts. So this is the back door that you have to young MAGA because they are in work environments like I was, where they're forced to be with lots of people of different viewpoints, or at least there are some people that they're forced to be around, and then they can get some of that, or being in a of a certain background, like the people of color who broke that way, like young, like the amount of like young Hispanic men, or the young black men who might have broke that way, and it's just these margins, these little amounts that are actually even needed to uh, push the other way. And so this is the vulnerability that the people that pushed Trump over the edge this time are people like me, like I was, in the situations where I was just struggling. I was, I mean, at the time, I was making under 16,000 in a year actually. So I mean, when I it took until 2020 until I had made 16,000 in a year. Like, I was struggling, and I was in and out of hospital. My health was in all kinds of ways. And so when you're in a situation where you're really down bad, um, you can end up in a state where you're perpetually putting putting everything on black and just hoping that it pays off. But it's not going to work. So it's important to continuously show those parts of MAGA, that MAGA is antithetical to the lives they want to live and the good of their communities, and present them other ways to live. Lifestyle influencers were so critical to this election. They showed MAGA as this contrarian thing where they tried to wash down how dysfunctional it actually is in society by telling people that the tension they experienced with society was this kind of status symbol. Uh, the other day, a friend who is still in that stew of junk reposted this Mel encouragement uh, that said that a man should be proud if his beliefs isolate him. It's all trying to make it okay that he's alone. It's disassociation. Meanwhile, he's clearly lonely and needs to convince himself that he's winning. Will guys experiencing chronic loneliness successfully find fulfillment in that status symbol? That's all they have? It's only if they retreat into smaller worlds and silos, and if their immediate environment is conducive to that retreat. So this would actually be particularly difficult for the young and people of color to do. Because I had work and where there were a lot of people my age, and I had family, and these were constant uh, points of tension. So dialing into that tension between MAGA and broader society is a weak point. Show this segment of MAGA that hasn't given up on society yet, that the tension with society they're feeling is actually inherent to being in MAGA, and that there are roles in society they can take that don't require as much of their life as MAGA, as much as their dignity, of their emotional investment, of their relationships, and that these alternative roles in society are much healthier, more meaningful, and better suited to their goals, lifestyles, and communities. And this will require a collaboration between lifestyle creators and political creators, similar to what was made in the far right ecosystem of reactionaries. People can't actually live fulfilling lives as reactionaries. So give them any idea of something with purpose. I think the young and minority Trump supporters are the Trump's coalition's most obvious weakness. Because I, for one, became less supportive of Trump the better integrated I became in society around me. Because my health was in such a bad shape, I was often isolated, and I didn't have all of those connections. But once I did, I didn't need it. I didn't need to believe in conspiracies to try to escape reality. I didn't need to believe that there was somebody out there above there who was just going to swoop in and save me with all of his words. So I was as maladjusted as I ever would be at the start of Trump's first presidency. And as I found meaning and purpose, I needed him less and less to fill that void and live through vicariously. I didn't need to watch somebody else have all of these victories. And I didn't need to feel this proximity to this guy because I had something myself that I could live for. So I still believe that this is the end of Trumpism. He couldn't win without minority and youth crossover support. And I believe That that crossover support is actually more vulnerable than people think because that's where I was. Your culture is what saved me from MAGA. I saw how much better your ways of living were to the way I was living. Your smiles were real. Your fights had more purpose. No matter what we experience, the next 4 years, remember this culture is truly more worthy of America than their conspiracy one.